24-year-old Leslie Ballard was a sheltered daughter of an affluent family.
She was on a perfect track to just marry a nice man, join the country club.
That is, until she was swept off her feet by a much older man named Mike McCool.
She's young, straight out of school. Mike McCool comes in, hot, flashy, working out.
Despite their age difference, the physical connection between Leslie and Mike was immediate and intense.
Leslie was on like an adrenaline high. He was so captivating, it was hot, it was sexy.
He offered kind of a portal to a world that she'd never been in before.
The lovers' insatiable appetites took them on a wild adventure filled with travel and expensive shopping sprees. Until a brutal crime brought it all to a horrifying end.
Her throat was cut from ear to ear.
Now, follow investigators as they try to determine the truth behind this shocking crime and unravel a twisted tale of hate, greed, forbidden romance, and a plot for revenge that led to murder.
It kind of opened our eyes. We were like, oh, wow, you gotta be kidding me.
September 13th, 2003. It was a little after 6 in the morning when off-duty police officer Mickey Holloway arrived at the home of his friend, 58-year-old Janie Ballard. Mickey was worried. Janie, a recent widow, hadn't been returning his phone calls.
Janie was very close to Mickey Holloway, and he had been trying to reach her.
When Mickey arrived at Janie's home, the garage was open, so he let himself in. And in the living room, he made a horrifying discovery. Janie Ballard's dead and bloody body sprawled across the floor.
Mickey Holloway can see Janie laying there on the floor. There's blood seeping through those clothes, and a lot of blood.
She was obviously dead.
Mickey Holloway called the discovery into police dispatch. Crime scene investigators arrived at the home moments later and confirmed that Janie Ballard's death was no accident.
It's a ferocious attack. There are dozens upon dozens of stab wounds.
This was definitely a homicide.
Who could have hated Janie Ballard enough to kill her in such a brutal and gruesome fashion? The answer to that question would lay bare a lurid tale of seduction, greed, and betrayal, and put police on the hunt for a pair of unexpected killers. Leslie Ballard was born in 1976 into one of Little Rock's most elite business families. Her parents, Lester and Janie, had built their printing service, Shepherd's, into a popular and profitable local institution.
They were very well respected. Nobody had anything bad to say about them.
She was well loved by her parents, and they had all they needed. They didn't live flashy, but they had everything they needed.
Lester Ballard, in particular, doted on his only daughter.
She was very much a daddy's girl.
Anything she needed, they would give her, but Daddy would give it to her first.
But despite her family's wealth and affluence, Leslie didn't come across as a spoiled brat. She was shy and withdrawn, and kept mostly to herself at the expensive and exclusive private schools her parents sent her to. After high school, Leslie left home for the first time to pursue a business degree at the University of Arkansas. When she graduated, she returned home to her family and the family business, which thrilled her parents.
But when Leslie finished school, she still stayed within the family by working for Shepherd's. Especially Dad, wanted her close by.
Having their only daughter take the reins of the family business was a dream come true for Leslie's mother and father. Her parents made sure to show their appreciation, buying her a new home, a new car, and giving her a very comfortable salary.
They bought her a condo, and they took care of her financially and made sure she had anything that she wanted or needed.
To family and friends alike, Leslie was the perfect daughter, loyally maintaining her family's tradition of excellence.
She was the vessel for her parents' hopes and dreams.
It seemed like she was on a perfect track to just probably take over the business, marry a nice man, join the country club.
And when it came to nice men, Leslie had always dated the well-heeled, gentlemanly, and button-down types her parents expected her to.
Leslie dated the Catholic high boys, the good boys, somebody that her parents would be comfortable with.
But beneath her complicit and demure daddy's girl veneer, Leslie was bored. She wanted more than just the straight-laced and predictable life she seemed destined for. She secretly craved a life of danger and excitement. And it was at a local gym that Leslie finally met the man who would give her all the excitement she could handle. 47-year-old Mike McCool. Like Leslie, Mike had been raised in a privileged household. But Mike's one-for-nothing childhood left him spoiled and directionless.
Mike's parents also had money, and they kind of let Mike do whatever he wanted to do.
Growing up, he had a bit of a wild streak, and in high school, Mike became the lead troublemaker on campus. Popular, but quick-tempered.
He would fly off the handle easily. He had a bit of a temper.
By the time he was 17, Mike's anger issues had become such a problem that his parents worried about his future. So they were relieved when he decided to enlist in the Marines. They hoped the military might teach Mike some self-discipline. And a few years later, when Mike returned to Little Rock, he seemed to have gotten his life in order. He got a job as a landscaper. And military service had changed other things about Mike as well.
He was a kind of a scrawny, short kid. But after he came back from the Marines, he took on a whole different persona of the strongman, the bodybuilder. He participated in the Mr. Arkansas bodybuilding competitions for many, many years.
But it seems Mike wasn't quite as dedicated about his relationships. By his 40s, Mike had gone through 2 failed marriages. But Mike was optimistic. He believed his 3rd marriage would be the charm. And it was while he was working on his well-built physique at a local gym that he laid eyes on the beautiful young woman he planned on making the next Mrs. Mike McCool. 24-year-old Leslie Ballard.
He approaches her, gives her a line. "You're the prettiest girl I've seen here in a while. Would you like some help in working out?"
Leslie didn't mind the pickup line. In fact, she liked Mike's confidence. She also liked his hard body and bad boy demeanor.
He wears, designer sunglasses and clothing that shows off his muscles, and she's fascinated by that.
He was like a rock star to her. And as a result, she fell in love and in bed. It was attraction and it was hot sex.
Leslie and Mike began dating, despite their 23-year age difference. His good looks were intoxicating to the sheltered 24-year-old.
She was tired of being that good Catholic schoolgirl who always did what her parents wanted her to do.
Mike McCool comes in, hot, flashy, working out. He can swoop her off her feet, do things with her in bed that she probably had never done before.
It didn't take long for Leslie to fall hopelessly in love. Mike was everything she dreamed about in a man, and more. Leslie's parents, however, were less than thrilled with their daughter's flamboyant boyfriend, especially when they learned of his unemployment. His only income came from part-time landscaping gigs and the occasional loan from his parents. But Leslie didn't care what her parents thought. She had more than enough money for both of them, and there wasn't anything she wouldn't do to make Mike happy. Soon they began spending Leslie's savings on motorcycles, sports cars, and expensive vacations.
Leslie spent money on Mike. Mike took the money because he comes from this background of getting whatever he wanted. When kids grow up with that kind of lifestyle, they expect it to continue on as they go into their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, and onwards.
But Leslie's parents' displeasure over her choice in boyfriend and her reckless spending was nothing compared to the shock they felt when she unveiled her dramatic new makeover not long after she and Mike began dating. At Mike's urging, Leslie had transformed herself completely into his dream girl.
She had her breasts augmented. She started wearing very skimpy clothes. She bleached her hair blonde.
You'd have to look again to make sure it was the same person.
Leslie's parents were horrified by their daughter's transformation from a conservative Catholic to a rebellious blonde. They begged their daughter to leave Mike and come home, but Leslie refused. In May of 2002, when the couple married atop the mountaintop tower in Hot Springs, Arkansas, Leslie's parents weren't even invited.
The only person who was with them was the person that they asked to marry them, and tourists were their witnesses.
When Leslie's parents learned of the marriage a few weeks later, they were devastated. Her father, Lester, was particularly heartbroken. He began to drink heavily, and his health soon declined.
Her father had a serious drinking problem, was an alcoholic. He was on the wagon for years.
Finally, in August of 2003, Lester Ballard passed away from his health problems. Leslie was so absorbed in her relationship with Mike that she didn't even know. At the time, the lovers were on vacation in Florida.
Leslie does not find out about her father's death until after he is already buried.
When Leslie finally did learn of her father's death, she was crestfallen and reached out to her mother, Janie. From the outside, it seemed that if there was one positive coming from Lester's death, it was that Leslie and her mother appeared to grow closer. But what no one then knew was that another family tragedy was just around the corner. And this time, it was a cold-blooded murder. Coming up, as Little Rock police begin their investigation, the brutal nature of the crime gives them their first clue.
This was personal. A lot of anger there.
And shocking new information points them in the direction of a possible suspect.
One of them had been charged with murder in the past.
"24-year-old Leslie Ballard had been the pride and joy of her affluent Arkansas parents.
Leslie was kind of the all-American girl. She was the child that most parents want to have.
But when she met a much older bodybuilder and known troublemaker named Mike McCool, the one-time daddy's girl transformed into a completely different person overnight.
She had glasses, brown hair, more of a mousy look, and then boom, you've got this blonde bombshell.
She goes from meek flute player at a Catholic school to hot babe in a sports car.
Her parents' distaste for both Mike and their daughter's new lifestyle put a strain on the family. But Leslie was too obsessed with her own happiness to notice. Until her father tragically died in August of 2003. In the wake of her father's passing, Leslie leaned on her mother for support. But unfortunately, the bond between Leslie and her mother took another tragic turn on the morning of September 13th, 2003. It all began when Janie Ballard's close friend, an off-duty police officer named Mickey Holloway, arrived at her house to check on her and found 58-year-old Janie dead in a pool of blood on her living room floor. There were dozens of stab wounds covering her body and a vicious slash across her throat.
It's a ferocious attack.
Her throat was cut from ear to ear.
Officer Holloway immediately called in the horrifying discovery.
He backed out at that point, called 911. They dispatched patrol units to the scene.
Investigators searched the Ballard home for any indication of the killer's motive and identity. Their search confirmed that some of Janie's jewelry, a rare coin collection, and one of the Ballard's luxury cars were missing.
The house had been ransacked. It looked like there was a robbery, and maybe Janie had walked in and in the middle of it.
But something about the scene didn't quite fit a robbery-homicide scenario.
It didn't look like ransacked, like people had just tore through it. It had more of a feel like something was staged.
The savage way Janie had been attacked supported their conclusion. To seasoned homicide detectives, Janie's injuries didn't look like the work of an interrupted burglar.
You start inspecting the victim's body and seeing the number of wounds, where the wounds are located. Then you start thinking in your head, okay, this is somebody that she knew.
To have that many, to me, it meant this was personal. A lot of anger there, that this has been building up in them for a while.
Working off that theory, detectives began digging into Janie Ballard's background, looking for signs of anyone who might have held a grudge against the well-known businesswoman.
Was there anybody that might have done this, that had that much hatred toward her that they wanted to kill her?
When police reached out to Janie's employees at her print shop, they offered detectives their first lead.
A gentleman that had recently been fired, didn't take it well, and made some comments, as he was leaving the building.
Was it possible the fired worker had made good on his threats and murdered his former boss? When detectives caught up with the former employee, he admitted that he had threatened Janie Ballard after he was let go, but he firmly denied having any role in her murder. Police asked the man for his whereabouts for both the day of and the day before Janie's body had been discovered, but he was able to provide a confirmed alibi for both days.
He had an airtight alibi, so it was obvious that he could not have been the person that killed Janie.
With the fired employee crossed off as a suspect, investigators circled back to Mickey Holloway, the off-duty officer who found Janie's body, to see if he knew anyone in Janie's life who might have wanted her dead. And to their surprise, he did.
He was the first one to say, I'm not saying they did it, but you need to find her daughter and her man.
The idea of Janie Ballard being killed by her own daughter and son-in-law seemed shocking to police. But Holloway explained that despite appearances, Janie's relationship with her mother hadn't been repaired the way everyone thought following Lester Ballard's funeral. Apparently, a particular point of friction was the fact that Janie still disapproved of Leslie and Mike's relationship. In fact, she'd never even been invited to the wedding.
Mike and Leslie decided to elope. I think that wedding on that mountain tower just shows how different Leslie had become.
In Janie's mind, it was unfathomable that a 47-year-old unemployed bodybuilder was really the best her daughter could do.
I don't think Mike McCool would be any mother's pick for their 20-something-year-old daughter to bring home to them.
But the age difference and Mike's sketchy employment history weren't the only things Janie found distasteful about her son-in-law. When her husband Lester was still alive, they'd done some digging into Mike's background. And through their contacts at the police department, they'd learned the real reason why Mike had enlisted in the armed forces. When he was 17, Mike took a group of teens on a drunken joyride, and one of them vomited on the back seat of Mike's beloved sports car. Mike was so enraged that he savagely beat the 14-year-old. The beating was so severe that the boy died in the hospital the following day. Mike was charged with murder, and the judge offered Mike a choice.
He never went to prison for it because he was allowed to go to join the Marines instead of entering a plea in that case.
The fact that Leslie's husband had killed someone made her parents understandably upset. But that wasn't all.
They also found that he had filed bankruptcy more than once and had quite a few financial problems. I'm sure that set off more alarms because Leslie was going to take over the printing business.
By that point, Leslie had already been supporting her boyfriend financially, spending her own trust fund on expensive cars, motorcycles for Mike, and lavish vacations for both of them. But then, Janie and Lester had discovered the shocking truth. Apparently, Leslie hadn't just been spending her money on Mike. She'd also been spending theirs.
Her father saw a huge charge on a business credit card, $15,000. Leslie and Michael had gone skiing, and she ends up paying for the whole trip on her Shepherd's credit card. She had, in essence, stolen from her family business to spend on her boyfriend.
To her doting father, Leslie had finally crossed the line.
Lester told Leslie, "You've made your choice. This is all the money that you're going to get from me. Go and live your life."
To investigators, it sounded like a powder keg waiting to explode. With their purse strings cut, had this pair of privileged lovers done the unthinkable? Coming up, police decide it's time to bring Leslie and Mike in for questioning. But tracking them down turns out to be harder than they thought.
We couldn't find them, and we were talking to the neighbors out there, trying to find out where they might have gone.
And detectives identify a possible witness with a shocking story to tell.
Once she made the decision that she was going to tell the truth, she just told it.
When 24-year-old blue blood Leslie Ballard met 47-year-old bodybuilder Mike McCool, the attraction was instant and intense.
He was the polar opposite of everything she'd ever experienced.
Leslie was on like an adrenaline high.
The couple quickly became inseparable, and Leslie went through a dramatic transformation, both inside and out. Not only did she get expensive plastic surgery, to her parents, it was like she became a completely different person.
She's a natural brunette, but she dyed her hair blonde. She got the breast enhancement surgery that Michael wanted. She basically wanted to turn herself into what Michael's picture of the ideal woman was.
Unfortunately, Michael's image of the ideal woman wasn't how Leslie's parents saw their daughter. As a result, the couple's romance drove a wedge between Leslie and her family. Before her father died, he gave Leslie one final ultimatum. It was either Mike or her family. And despite having always been Daddy's little girl, Leslie's obsessive love for Mike ultimately won.
Leslie knew that her parents were displeased, and in the end, she chose Michael over her parents.
Heartbroken, Leslie's parents had reluctantly decided to cut her off. But after her father died, Leslie discovered that he'd also drastically reduced her inheritance.
Lester, unbeknownst to Leslie, had changed his will, and Leslie went from getting hundreds of thousands of dollars to $25,000.
And when Leslie found out she'd received far less than what she'd expected of her father's estate, she was furious. According to Janie Ballard's friend, Mickey Holloway, Leslie had confronted her mother about the inheritance on September 7th, just 5 days before Janie was found murdered in her home.
She was very upset, and she wanted her money.
Holloway told police that Leslie had brought her husband Mike with her, and the way he threatened Janie left her rattled to the core.
Janie had been concerned for her safety and told them if anything ever happens to me, it was Michael McCool who did it.
With the knowledge that Janie had been in fear of her son-in-law, homicide detectives were eager to interview both Mike and Leslie about the crime. When police visited Leslie and Mike's West Little Rock condo, they found no one at home. Was the couple on the run? As police weighed their options, Leslie and Mike surprised them.
As we leave their house, a truck comes by, and sure enough, they're pulling in.
When detectives delivered the bad news about Janie's death, Leslie and Mike's reactions were eye-opening.
She doesn't start crying, she doesn't fall to the ground, but Michael goes over the top with his reaction. He begins to cry or yell or scream, and he keeps asking, "Leslie, are you okay? Leslie, are you okay?"
Police asked Leslie and Mike to make official statements about their whereabouts during the murder. Separated into individual interview rooms, the couple gave detectives identical accounts.
They didn't have anything to do with the homicide. They couldn't have done it. They wouldn't have done it.
Asked about her relationship with her mother, Leslie denied that there had been any drama between her and Janie. She claimed that during their last visit together, they had bonded in grief.
She and her mother cried talking about her father, and she was just concerned for her mother.
To hear Leslie describe it, the slashed inheritance was never an issue.
The whole money thing came up, and she said, "Oh no, the money was no big deal. I was satisfied with that. We weren't mad about it."
Mike also described the couple's relationship with Janie as ideal, but police weren't buying it.
Mike told police that he and Janie got along really well and they had a good relationship, and police just knew that wasn't true.
Detectives gambled that taking an aggressive approach with Leslie would pay off.
We're thinking if anybody's going to crack, it's probably going to be her.
They start to hammer home at that lie that they picked up from her statement. At one point, Detective Moore says, "You need to tell us the truth. You'll feel better if you tell us the truth." And at that point, Leslie sort of drops her head and sort of nods a little bit and says, "Okay, but it's not good."
Leslie admitted that what the police had learned from the Ballards' friends and relatives was true. Her marriage to Mike had strained her relationship with her parents to the breaking point. Leslie said things got so bad between her and her mother that when her father died, Janie hadn't even bothered to tell her.
Her mother didn't contact her. It was finally somebody from the printing company that contacted her and told her that her father had passed.
For Leslie, it was the final straw.
That was kind of the end for her and her mom. It just put so much more stress in that relationship than what was already there.
And when Leslie came home for her father's funeral, she was shocked by how quickly Janie had moved on.
All evidence of her father has been stripped from the house. Knickknacks, whatever. Any evidence that her father lived there was gone.
Janie had sold her father's Cadillac and bought a Mercedes for herself. She was really bothered by that. She told her mom, it's almost like you're trying to forget him, that you're trying to erase his memory from the house.
But Leslie said her mother told her there was one aspect of her beloved father's legacy that she intended to follow to the letter. Lester's dying wish was that the family fortune stay out of the hands of Mike McCool.
Her father took it as a way to protect her from Mike McCool because he knew if he gave her that money, that Mike would eventually get a hold of it.
To Leslie, who had always been the apple of her father's eye, it was a betrayal. When she described what had happened to Mike, he was furious.
Mike telling her, "You deserve better. You're the only child. That this is not right. Contest the will."
And when Mike reviewed a copy of the will, one clause jumped out at him.
They read it, and it's kind of like, hey, you're only getting $25,000. Now, unless Miss Ballard dies within a certain amount of time, she's going to get the remainder.
If Janie dies within 30 days of Lester's death, then the money would go naturally to Leslie. He tells Leslie, "We've got to kill your mother."
The will loophole solved two problems. Money, which they wanted, and two, the mother, who had become a pain, would be gone.
Leslie said Mike began planning his mother-in-law's death in detail. Surveillance of the Ballard home revealed when Janie would be home each day. Leslie said Mike considered buying a shotgun to kill Janie, but settled on a weapon that was harder to trace.
They got a butcher knife. Fairly expensive knife, not just a little cheap flimsy one, but about an 8-inch butcher knife.
Leslie swore that she had no intention of letting Mike carry out his plan.
She thought she could talk Michael out of it. She thought she could appeal to his reason, and that Michael would see that eventually, when she dies, we're going to get all the money anyway.
But on the morning of September 12th, Michael told his wife that it was time. Janie Ballard had only hours to live. Coming up, police hear the graphic details of the brutal murder from a first-hand witness.
He went bananas. I mean, he just went berserk.
He said, "I know I hit a lung because I heard the air wheeze out."
And the killer's true identity stuns experienced homicide investigators into silence.
I'm thinking, okay, here we go. And the next words are, "I killed her."
When Leslie Ballard married Mike McCool in the spring of 2002, she turned her back on her parents and the successful family business in favor of wild nights with a hardcore bad boy twice her age.
Mike McCool was mesmerizing her and seducing her.
Mike's checkered past made no difference to Leslie. But when a family friend discovered Leslie's disapproving mother murdered in her home,
She's been stabbed repeatedly. This is somebody who is very angry, and they are getting retribution.
Leslie confirmed police's theory that Mike had hatched the deadly plot to snatch the Ballard family fortune.
They knew that of the two people they were talking to, one of them had been charged with murder in the past. And it was not Leslie, it was Michael.
Leslie described Mike's preparation leading up to her mother's murder in minute detail. She claimed that at first, she thought it was all just talk. She didn't believe he would actually go through with it. But when the day arrived, Mike insisted they go through with the plan. And Leslie told police she was simply too scared of her husband to argue.
Leslie was given the untenable situation of kill her mother or be killed.
So on Friday, September 12th, Leslie did as she was told and suited up for their home invasion.
They had her dressed up in all black, mask, gloves on, boots on that were bigger than her feet, so that if footprints were left, you'd be looking for like a size 12 instead of a 6.
As detectives listened, Leslie described their arrival at the Ballard house and the tense moments leading up to Janie's return home from work.
Leslie waits in the bushes outside her mother's house until she sees her mother come, open the garage door, and pull in.
Detectives wanted to know, where was Mike? How did he get in and kill Janie Ballard? The answer caught them completely by surprise.
She kind of looks down and she, takes a breath. I'm thinking, okay, here we go. And the next words are, I killed her. And it takes me a couple of seconds, I hear it, but it doesn't really register.
She goes in the garage door before the garage door closes, and then comes in contact with her mother in the kitchen. At that point, stabs her.
She was the one that did it. She went in and stabbed her mom.
Leslie admitted that when she stabbed Janie, something inside her just snapped, and she kept on stabbing her. A total of 70 times, taking out all her pent-up rage toward her estranged mother. Leslie's confession was a complete game changer.
It seemed like it was somebody strong, like a man, who could do that to Janie.
No one thinks that a daughter can murder with that type of brutality their own mother. That's hard to wrap your head around.
While Janie Ballard lay bleeding out on her floor, Leslie carried out the rest of Mike's plan, ransacking the house and collecting expensive jewelry and her father's coin collection. But before she left, Leslie had one more gruesome task to perform.
One of the last things she did to make sure she was dead, she cut her throat.
The final phase of the plan involved taking the family car and a disguise.
She put a wig on, like a black afro wig. In case anybody saw her, they'd think maybe a black person was driving the car. And then drove to a part of Little Rock, which is predominantly black neighborhood. So everything they planned was for us to be looking for a black individual.
If all went according to plan, an unsuspecting burglar and car thief would catch the heat for Janie Ballard's murder. While detectives learned the full scope of Leslie's responsibility for her mother's death, back in police headquarters, Mike was growing increasingly anxious.
He started getting antsy, and we started picking up on this.
He's just pacing back and forth. And every time a detective walks out of the room where Leslie is, Michael asks him, what is she saying in there? What's going on in there?
Once detectives had the full story, they moved to arrest Mike McCool. But Mike wasn't about to make it easy on them.
He went bananas. He just went berserk.
Michael was like a caged animal, bouncing off the walls, once it became clear that he was not walking out of that interview room a free man.
When police left Mike alone to cool down, he decided to take his fate into his own hands.
There was a thermostat in the room. Michael used a piece of metal off of that thermostat to gouge at his wrist, trying to kill himself.
Officers' attempts to save Mike from himself became a pitched battle.
Mike barricaded himself in the interview room, and they finally had to bring in pepper spray and just open the door and spray him to subdue him.
With Mike cuffed to a hospital bed, detectives continued questioning Leslie. With her cooperation, they secured clothing she'd worn when she stabbed Janie to death, stashed in an old tire.
It had rainwater in it, but we found the clothes, and when you dump that rainwater out, it was red with the blood.
But when police went to where Leslie said she'd abandoned Janie's car, they were out of luck.
She showed them where she had left the car, which had been stolen by the time they got there.
A trip to Mike's parents' house yielded other deadly souvenirs.
They find a bag that's got some jewelry in it in the room where Leslie and Michael had slept that night. They find a burn pile in the woods where they find fragments of evidence from Janie's house.
And throughout it all, Leslie remained surprisingly upbeat.
All during this long road trip with detectives, Leslie is not like the woman that just murdered her mother. She's almost like a buddy. She's chatty. She's friendly.
After his thwarted suicide attempt, Mike began to cooperate. But his version of events was very different from what police had heard so far. To hear Mike tell it, Leslie had planned Janie Ballard's murder by herself.
Michael's story shifted to where Leslie had killed her mother without Michael knowing it, and that he only found out about her killing her mother after the fact, and that he was upset with her. He thought, well, this could have been worked out. You didn't have to kill your mother.
His admission was more of like, after he found out about it, he just tried to help his wife out.
But detectives remained convinced that Leslie was telling the truth. They believed Mike planned the murder and Leslie carried it out.
At any time police pointed to something Leslie told them Michael had done, Michael had an excuse. I was afraid that she was going to kill me, but I hid some evidence for you.
As a show of good faith, Mike directed investigators to a vital piece of the deadly puzzle, the butcher knife that killed Janie Ballard.
It's the last link in the chain, and it's a critically important piece of evidence that ties Leslie and Michael to Janie's murder.
At Mike's suggestion, police divers searched the bottom of a lake near his parents' house.
Less than 15 minutes after entering the water, the diver comes up with a knife. The point of the knife breaks the surface first, and then you can see the entirety of the knife. Then the diver's arm comes up.
It was like a scene out of a movie.
Little Rock police were confident they had enough evidence to put Janie Ballard's killers behind bars. But would a jury believe that Mike McCool had put Leslie up to it? Coming up, Leslie and Mike play the blame game while on trial for their lives.
He pretty much maintained his innocence really throughout. Blamed it all on her.
Leslie and Mike McCool were living a freewheeling lifestyle that came to a crashing halt when Leslie confessed to the brutal slaying of her estranged mother, Janie. Now, on the evening of her murder trial, Leslie continued to lay the blame for the murder plot at Mike's feet.
She is completely under his control, mentally, physically, emotionally.
He had the kind of hold on her that she just kept going back.
In the days leading up to the trial, the Little Rock, Arkansas community was still reeling at the idea that a supposedly perfect daughter could do what Leslie stood accused of.
I think people were in shock. How can a daughter whose parents seem to have given her everything, not just kill her mother, but nearly decapitate her mother?
When her trial began in May of 2004, Leslie pleaded not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. The basis for her insanity plea was her toxic relationship with Mike.
Her defense was that she was in extreme duress. She was an abused and battered woman.
From the very beginning, she says her husband forced her to do it. She feared for her own life, that if she didn't kill her mother, that he would then kill her and her mother.
Leslie admitted to taking her mother's life, but she told the jury that it was all because Mike was taking over her life.
He had basically taken control of her. From the beginning, it changed her persona, it changed the way she dressed, what she did. Their relationship became more about getting the money than about his love for her. I don't know how you can call it anything but brainwashing.
The prosecution reminded the jurors that Leslie had every opportunity to do the right thing.
There were numerous points during the series of events where Leslie was alone. Leslie could have gone up behind her mother and said, "Hey, Mom, Michael sent me to kill you. Let's call the police."
And graphic crime scene photos told a story that was hard to dispute.
There was definitely rage visible on Janie's body. You have so many stab wounds, and Janie's head is nearly cut off. And that's not somebody who's simply under extreme duress and an unwilling participant.
After days of trying to convince the jury that she shouldn't be held responsible for her actions, Leslie and her defense team watched the jury return from hours of deliberation.
The jury verdict was guilty of capital murder.
The attack was just too savage for there to be shared blame. Their verdict carried an automatic sentence of life without parole. Leslie's only reaction was to hang her head.
I wonder if she was thinking of her mother at that point. I'm sure she was. I wonder if she was thinking of her father. I know one person she wasn't thinking about, and that was Michael McCool.
5 months later, Mike McCool had his own day in court. His defense was to point the finger at Leslie.
He pretty much maintained his innocence really throughout. Blamed it all on her.
The prosecution argued that even if Mike's hand wasn't on the knife, he masterminded the plot and was as guilty as Leslie.
The state argued that Mike was just as culpable as Leslie, that he planned it, he helped her carry it out, and he came up with, the approach to walk away and make it look like a botched burglary.
Leslie was the bomb that killed her mother, but Michael lit the fuse. Without Michael, Leslie would not have exploded. Without Leslie, Michael wouldn't have had a fuse to light.
The jury agreed.
The jury comes back with a guilty verdict for first-degree murder, giving him 60 years in prison.
While Janie's killers had been brought to justice, the Ballard family lay in ruins, leaving those close to them trying to understand what drove a beloved daughter to arrive at such a dark place.
It was not in a little rage, not a lot of rage, but an enormous amount of rage that has to be carried inside a person to result in more than 50 stab wounds, some of them post-mortem. There was a serious reservoir of anger within Leslie for her mother that can't be explained just by the influence of one man.